My name is Isabella Reed. I was 32 years old when I learned that betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it arrives plated between prime rib and roasted vegetables, poured alongside expensive wine, and announced with a smile that assumes you won't fight back. I'd been with Ethan Caldwell for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. He was 34, charming in a clean-cut, finance bro kind of way, the type of man who believed confidence was the same thing as correctness. He worked in fashion marketing, pulling in about $65,000 a year. I was a senior software engineer making just over $140,000. That imbalance never bothered me. I'd never needed a man to earn more to feel secure. I needed honesty. I thought I had it. We'd been house hunting for months around the Boulder area, carefully, methodically. When we finally found it, a craftsman-style home with great bones, listed at $420,000, it felt like a win we'd earned together. The plan was clear: 20% down, $84,000 total. I'd contribute $50,000, savings I'd built over years of skipped vacations and late nights debugging code. Ethan would put in $34,000. His parents, Gerald and Susan Caldwell, were gifting him $30,000, and he'd save the remaining $4,000 himself. Ownership would reflect contributions, 60-40 in my favor. Everyone agreed. Or so I thought. We signed the purchase agreement 2 weeks earlier. The deposit had to be wired within 10 days. I sent my portion immediately. Ethan said he was coordinating the transfer from his parents. No rush. Then came Sunday dinner. Susan went all out. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, linen napkins folded just right. Gerald opened a bottle of Napa Valley wine he'd been saving. It felt like a celebration. I should have noticed how Ethan kept glancing at his parents. Halfway through the meal, he tapped his fork against his wine glass. "I've been thinking a lot about our future," he said, voice steady. "And I've made an important decision." I smiled, expecting wedding talk. Venues, dates, anything normal. "I think we need a prenuptial agreement," he continued. "Everything stays separate. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours." The room went quiet. I set down my fork slowly. "Okay," I said. "Let's talk about it." Gerald leaned forward immediately. "Smart move, Ethan. No offense, Isabella, but protecting assets is just good financial planning." "None taken," I replied. And I meant it. Prenups weren't the issue. Ethan smiled, smug, satisfied. "I knew you'd understand. You're so practical." Then he kept talking. "We keep finances separate. Separate taxes, separate accounts. Clean and simple." "And the house?" I asked. "Well, obviously we'd both be on the deed," he said casually. "Once we're married, it becomes joint property, 50-50. I blinked. "Even though I'm putting in more?" He waved it off. "We're a team." The contradiction landed hard. "So just to be clear," I said calmly, "you want financial separation where it protects you and shared benefit where it helps you." Susan shifted uncomfortably. Gerald stared at his plate. "I'd been thinking about this for weeks," Ethan added. "My ex went through a horrible divorce. I don't want drama." Weeks. While I wired $50,000 into escrow. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "Funny you say that." He frowned. "Why?" "Because this timing is perfect," I said. Silence. "I withdrew my name from the house purchase yesterday." You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Susan's voice shook. "What do you mean, withdrew?" "I contacted escrow," I said evenly. Since Ethan hadn't deposited his portion yet, and we're not married, I was able to back out and reclaim my funds. Ethan's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I already did," I replied, turning my phone toward him. "Here's the confirmation." Gerald's tone turned icy. "We already transferred Ethan the $30,000. "Then he can buy the house himself," I said. "His credit, his money, his house. Separate finances, right?" "I can't qualify a loan," Ethan whispered. "Then maybe the house was never affordable." Susan stood abruptly. "This is coercion." "No," I said calmly. "This is consistency." Ethan's voice cracked. "I need your money. The loan approval was based on both incomes." "But you just said what's mine is mine," I replied. "You don't get access to my savings without responsibility." The table erupted. Accusations. Tears. threats. I stood, collected my bag, and looked at Ethan. Let me know what you decide. You've got about 70 hours left before escrow closes. Then I walked out, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. I barely made it halfway home before my phone started vibrating. At first, it was Ethan, then Susan, then Gerald. By the time I pulled into my apartment parking lot, I had 19 missed calls and more texts than I bothered to count. I didn't open a single one. I knew exactly what they would say. Shock, outrage, bargaining. The illusion had cracked, and now they were scrambling to glue it back together before the money finished leaking out. I sat in my car for a long minute, hands still on the steering wheel, heart steady in a way that surprised me. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just felt clear. Inside, I stacked my laptop bag by the door and poured myself a glass of water. That was when the texts escalated from outrage to panic. Ethan, we need to talk. You blindsided me. I laughed softly. The irony was almost elegant. Another message came through, longer this time. The sellers are threatening to walk. We could lose the earnest money. My parents already sent the gift. You didn't think this through. I stared at the screen, then set the phone face down. I had thought it through. Weeks ago. That night, I slept better than I had in months. By Monday morning, the tone shifted. No more anger, just desperation. Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced at 7:12 a.m. Hair unstyled, eyes bloodshot, panic clinging to him like sweat. You can't just destroy everything, he said the moment I opened the door. I didn't, I replied calmly. I stepped away from something that no longer made sense. He ran a hand through his hair. My credit score alone isn't enough. Every lender needs your income. That's unfortunate. His jaw tightened. So that's it? You're just going to let us lose the house? You mean you lose the house? He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. The version of me that smiled and absorbed imbalance had quietly left the room. This was always the plan, I said evenly. Separate finances. You decided that. That was for after marriage. And the house was before marriage, I countered. You can't rewrite rules mid-play. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. There was nothing left to say. Later that afternoon, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Isabella? A hesitant voice asked. Who's calling? It's Tyler, Ethan's friend. That got my attention. We talked for nearly an hour, and by the time we hung up, the final puzzle piece slid into place. Ethan hadn't just considered a prenup. He'd been bragging about it. He told us he had you locked in, Tyler admitted, sounding uncomfortable. Said you'd fund most of the house, and the prenup would make sure his family money stayed protected. My grip tightened around the phone. He actually called you? Tyler hesitated. A bank with a ring attached. There it was. The phrase that explained everything. The sudden prenup, the entitlement, the confidence that I'd swallow it quietly. Thanks for telling me, I said softly. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I felt relief. The next 48 hours were chaos on their side. Ethan applied to every lender he could find. Denver banks, credit unions, online mortgage brokers, even a few sketchy websites that promised approvals in minutes. None of them worked. On his income alone, the highest approval he received was $200,000. The house was gone, and the $5,000 earnest money vanished with it. Susan called me screaming that night, accusing me of ruining their family. You knew he couldn't afford it, she shouted. Yes, I replied calmly, which is why I assumed honesty mattered. She hung up on me. Tuesday morning, Gerald escalated. He showed up at my office downtown. Security let him into the lobby before stopping him. He didn't care. You cost us $35,000, he snapped. The gift and the earnest money. I didn't cost you anything, I said, standing my ground. I exited a purchase before marriage, legally, ethically, transparently. You knew he needed you. and he knew I expected partnership. He reached for my phone when I pulled up Ethan's text about separate finances. Security intervened immediately. Gerald was escorted out. Wednesday brought a new tactic. Ethan sent Katie, a mutual friend, to mediate. We met at a coffee shop in Cherry Creek. She barely touched her latte. I'm listening. Prenup stays, she continued, but the house ownership would be joint. I laughed. Not loudly, just once. That's not compromise, I said. That's exactly what he wanted. Well, like what? She hesitated. Shared streaming subscriptions. I stared. He wanted $50,000 from me, I said slowly. But he's offering Netflix. Her cheeks flushed. You're being unreasonable. I'm being consistent. She left without finishing her drink. That night, Ethan went public. He posted a dramatic story online about betrayal, about how his dream was stolen by a woman intimidated by a strong, independent man. The comment section dismantled him within hours. Wait, you wanted a prenup but expected her to pay more for the house? Separate finances but joint property? That's not how math works. Didn't you brag about her funding it? One of his coworkers even commented, "Didn't you call her your personal ATM last week?" The post disappeared 2 hours later. Thursday, his parents tried one last time. They invited me to dinner to resolve things maturely. I suggested a neutral restaurant instead. Gerald arrived with a PowerPoint presentation. Our proposal, he said, clicking through slides. You contribute $50,000, we provide $30,000. Ownership is 50-50. So I pay 62%, I said flatly, and own half. It's about love, Susan pleaded, about building a life. I wanted a partner, I replied. Ethan wanted a sponsor. That was when Ethan exploded. You embarrassed me, he shouted. Everyone knows you bailed. You embarrassed yourself, I said calmly. You tried to protect yourself while spending my money. That money is nothing to you. And there it was, the truth. Finally spoken. I stood up, paid my portion of the bill, and walked out. They followed, shouting. I didn't look back. For the first time, the power had fully shifted, and they knew it. By Friday morning, the situation had crossed from ugly into surreal. I woke up to an email marked urgent, certified delivery. Ethan had hired an attorney. The letter claimed I owed him $50,000 for detrimental reliance and breach of promise to marry. According to his lawyer, Ethan had reasonably expected my financial participation and had suffered damages because I withdrew. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer. Tom Rodriguez called me within 15 minutes, laughing so hard he had to mute himself. Is he serious? Tom finally asked. Apparently. Isabella, he said, still chuckling. This is one of the weakest threats I've seen in 20 years. He dismantled the claim piece by piece. No money had ever exchanged hands between us for Ethan's portion of the house. Withdrawing from a real estate purchase before marriage was fully legal. Ethan's own messages explicitly demanded separate finances. And reasonable expectation did not include assuming access to someone else's savings while demanding protection from obligation. Tom sent a response that afternoon. Firm, polite, devastating. We never heard back from Ethan's attorney again. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Ethan decided to double down. He tried to keep the wedding venue. I didn't even know that was possible until I received an invoice for $18,000. Half the deposits, along with a note that said, if you're still serious about fixing this, you'll help cover what's already been paid. I responded with screenshots, his texts, his words, everything separate. The venue refused to refund him. Another $16,000 evaporated, money his parents had paid, convinced I'd come to my senses. Susan called me sobbing, accusing me of ruining her son's life. I blocked her number. The engagement ring became its own nightmare. Ethan refused to return it. He claimed I had disgraced him and forfeited the right to the ring. Colorado law was very clear. An engagement ring was a conditional gift. No marriage, no ring. He still wouldn't budge, so Tom stepped in. 2 days later, Ethan returned the ring, through his lawyer. Something felt off the moment I opened the box. The diamond didn't catch the light the same way. I took it to the same jeweler who had appraised it before Ethan proposed. The verdict was immediate. Fake. He'd swapped the diamond. Tom didn't laugh this time. He sent one email. One. Mentioned appraisal records, serial numbers, theft charges. The real ring was returned within 48 hours. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And then came the final unexpected blow, the $30,000 gift from Ethan's parents. Because it had been transferred to Ethan individually and exceeded the annual exclusion, it triggered IRS gift tax rules. They owed nearly $4,000 in gift taxes. And because the money was never used to purchase a home, Ethan owed income tax on it as well, around $6,000. Their attempt to protect themselves financially had backfired spectacularly. Their $30,000 gift ended up costing them nearly $40,000. And they got nothing in return. 3 months later, Ethan was living back in his childhood bedroom. He'd given notice on his apartment, expecting to move into our house. Instead, he moved home with his parents. He still posted online, long captions about healing, the trail, and thriving despite toxic women. Tyler showed me Ethan's new dating profile one night over drinks. Looking for a real woman who isn't intimidated by success. Must be financially secure and generous. Apparently, he mentioned prenups on first dates and still expected the women to cover dinner. They never made it to date 2. One woman reportedly told him, "You don't want a partner, you want a sponsor." She unmatched him immediately. Katie, the friend who tried to mediate, reached out to apologize. She hadn't known about the bank with a ring comment, or the months-long plan to leverage my income while protecting Ethan's equity. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I really thought he loved you." "So did I replied. "That house we almost bought? It sold 3 weeks later for $40,000 below asking price. It could have been an incredible deal, but it was never real. Not the house, not the partnership. It was always me financing a vision that protected him from every possible downside." My mother, retired family court judge, summed it up perfectly when Ethan tried to get her on his side. "That boy wanted a sponsor," she said, "not a spouse." She was right. I invested the $50,000 I'd pulled from escrow. It was up 12% within the year. Dating wasn't on my radar yet. But when it is, I'll be looking for someone who wants to build something together. Someone who understands that partnership means sharing risk, not just reward. Someone who wants my future, not my savings. Someone who doesn't confuse entitlement with love. Ethan got exactly what he demanded. Total financial independence from me. And honestly, I've never felt more free. The strangest part wasn't the silence. It was how quickly it stopped hurting once the noise finally died down. After the legal threats fizzled and the public meltdowns faded, there was a stretch of quiet that felt unfamiliar. No more texts, no more calls from unknown numbers, no more secondhand updates from friends who felt awkward bringing Ethan up in conversation. Just space. For the first time in a long while, my life wasn't revolving around managing someone else's expectations. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't seem to function without an audience. He moved back in with Gerald and Susan officially after his lease ended. The same parents who had once lectured me about good financial planning were now quietly covering groceries, utilities, and his car insurance. The irony didn't escape me. According to Tyler, dinner at their house had become a nightly replay of blame. Susan blamed me. Gerald blamed the market. Ethan blamed modern women. No one blamed Ethan. That part was predictable. What surprised me was how quickly his confidence evaporated when no one was left to absorb it. Without my income stabilizing the fantasy, his independence turned out to be entirely theoretical. He still talked about success, still framed himself as the wronged party, still insisted he'd dodged a bullet, but his actions told a different story. The dating attempts didn't last long. Ethan discovered, painfully, that women who were actually financially secure had boundaries. They asked questions. They expected balance. They didn't laugh off prenup conversations when those conversations only seemed to protect one side. Mentioning separate finances on a first date while expecting generosity worked exactly 0 times. The pattern repeated. Dinner. Awkward silence. No second date. Eventually, even his friends stopped setting him up. I ran into Susan once at the grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, older. Tired in a way anger couldn't mask anymore. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at me and said, "You didn't have to ruin him." I met her gaze calmly. "I didn't ruin your son. I just stopped financing him." She didn't respond. That told me everything. The final loose end tied itself quietly. The wedding venue called, not for money, but to confirm I was no longer associated with the reservation. They apologized for the confusion. They'd removed my name completely. I thanked them. Then I deleted the email. There was nothing left to untangle. I moved apartments 2 months later. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to. A fresh space, clean lines, no memories attached to imagined futures that never existed. I donated the wedding decor, sold the dress, kept the ring locked away until I decided what to do with it. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt heavy. That alone told me I'd made the right decision. People asked if I regretted how I handled things, if I thought I'd been too harsh, too calculated, too cold. I always answered honestly. My only regret is not listening sooner. The signs had been there. The way Ethan never reached for the check. The way expensive plans were always our dream, but my responsibility. The jokes about dating someone with money like it was a perk, not a partnership. I'd brush them off as humor. They weren't jokes. They were disclosures. I don't hate Ethan. I don't wish him harm, but I don't miss him either. What I miss, the idea of what we could have been, was built on an imbalance that would have eventually crushed me. Love isn't someone protecting themselves while spending you. Commitment isn't risk-free for one side. And partnership doesn't start with keeping score. That prenup conversation? Yes, it happened exactly as described. Yes, it happened in front of his parents. And no, I don't think prenups are inherently bad. When done fairly, they protect both people. But when used as a tool to manipulate, extract, and insulate one person while exposing the other, that's not caution. That's exploitation. Ethan wanted, "What's mine is mine. What's yours is ours." Instead, he got exactly what he demanded. Complete financial separation. Permanent. And I got something far more valuable than a house or a wedding. I got clarity. I got peace. I got my future back, fully funded, fully protected, and no longer up for negotiation.